Hi guys, it's Aoife from Words of Clover, and I haven't done a video in a while, and I owe you guys a reading recap. I haven't done any reading or wrap-ups this year so far, and we are in the middle of May, so I'm going to try and do a few quick wrap-ups for you guys. Hopefully do January and February in one video. I'm going to do a singular one for March, which is the Irish Readathon, and then I will do April and May in the next video. So yeah, I owe you guys a few different reading wrap-ups. I have to date, as of today, which is the 16th of May, I have read 37 books, so kind of just average. I'm trying to do 100 books a year, which is what I always do. My reading's definitely slower this year, even slower than last year when I had a newborn. Turns out that when babies start moving, it's very hard to do anything else but watch them. So I'm getting very little reading done during the day, and then not so much reading done at night either. Kind of actually more reading if I'm reading on my Kindle or on my phone, because I can read in the dark if I end up having to go to bed early with the baby. And yeah, my physical book reading is not doing so well this year, or at least it's taking me a lot longer. But that doesn't mean that I haven't been reading some great books either. So I wanted to get started, tell you about all the books I read in January and February in this video. And yeah, let's get started. So the first book, I think I've talked about this before, but I always try and put a lot of, not pressure, but I try and choose my first book of the year quite well. I always try and go for an Irish book. I always go for a book that I feel like I'm gonna love, and that was Nesting by Roisin O'Donnell. And yeah, this is just such a fantastic book. In this one we are following a character called Ciara, who is married. She has two daughters, and it's kind of clear from the start that she's in quite an emotionally abusive relationship and manipulative relationship with her husband. He is not a very nice man. She's feeling very trapped, and we follow her as she finally is like, enough is enough, and she leaves him. But because he's kind of basically financially controlled the relationship, she has like no money. He has isolated her from her friends and family, and he's also made it so that she can't even like leave the country to go back to her parents, or because her daughters can't travel with her, so she's obviously not going to leave her daughters behind with a man who is abusive. So she ends up going into something that is called emergency accommodation in Ireland, and emergency accommodation in Ireland is not a very well set up thing, and it ends up with families, mostly mothers with children, ending up in like these like grotty hotel rooms or hotel setups for a very long time. Through all of this, her husband is constantly trying to get her back as well. And I had like genuine, I feel like, physical reactions to reading this book. Like the way he talked to her, the way he tried to like bring her back onto his side. It was so just like, my skin would like crawl, my stomach would like clench when I was reading this, because he was just so horrible, and you could see what he was doing. You could see the kind of person he was, but you could see how hard it was for her to resist him, and the way he would just kind of come back and start ruining things for her. And it was just I had such visceral reactions to that, which I think is like goes to show what a good book this is. Your heart is just in your throat for Ciara and her daughters, and like, will they be safe? Will they be able to get away from him? It kind of feels like it's impossible, and you're just really, really rooting for her as she starts to kind of get those chances of creating a better life, and then like he's just getting closer and closer, and you're just like, you want to like reach into the book and like just grab them away from him. So yeah, this was a very easy 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved this, and I highly recommend people pick up Nesting because it was so good. The book then I picked up in January was another Irish book, and that was Daughter of the Otherworld by Shauna Lawless. This is the book 2 in kind of a spin-off series of her original trilogy, which is the Gale Song trilogy, which I read last year. And this is kind of era 2 of the Gale Song trilogy. So we are actually following not really the same characters, but a character did show up in that original trilogy kind of near the end, and some things were left kind of like unfinished, and there are some characters that are quite long living that are actually still alive in this one. And we're following it hundreds of years later, and we are following a character, I think her name is Sorka. We're following a character called Sorka as she realises she's not who she thinks she is, and she ends up having to go on the run while also kind of trying to figure out who she is, her real heritage, her powers, and she kind of gets involved in another kind of era of Irish history, which is the King of Leinster, Dermot, the King of Leinster at the time. He was the one that reached over to England and basically invited them to come over and help him get rid of some of the other kings, because he was having, you know, and it was kind of, this is kind of like one of those first steps of the English coming into Ireland, and it's the era of like Strongbow coming over, and yeah, this was kind of like the first kind of real invasion of Ireland by the English, or who would be the English at the time, because they're kind of the Normans at the time, and yeah, we're seeing that kind of play out in this book. And yeah, again, this was just really fun to read. I really liked seeing another era of history through this like second part of this series. Oh, sorry, it's not Sorka, it's Isolde. That is the character's name that we're following. And yeah, I just love seeing how this played out. There was kind of a romance, kind of a flickering romance that we could see happen as well. That was quite lovely to play out. And again, really intrigued to see what happens, because I feel like the villains in this series are just like really hard to kill, basically, and they seem to just keep getting away with everything. So I'm really hoping we have this like big showdown in this trilogy now of them finally having their comeuppance, because I'm sick and tired of them getting away with everything, basically, and I want them to go down. So yeah, I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I did really enjoy it. And I'm looking forward to the second book that I presume it'll probably be out next year. After that, I read The Wedding Lies by Jade Lee Wright, who is our very own boho bookworm on YouTube. We are following a character who is from South Africa, and she is coming to England to meet her fiance's family right before the wedding. So she hasn't met them before, and she starts kind of figuring out that they're a little bit weird, maybe slightly culty, and she just feels like something really weird is going on. She starts seeing these news stories about this girl that's gone, this like local girl who's gone missing, and there's kind of this big like manhunt looking for her, and she is convinced that she sees this girl in the back of a car being driven by a man who she then later on finds out is her future father-in-law. So she ends up kind of taking it upon herself to figure out what the hell is going on. Is this girl alive? Could her father-in-law have something to do with the disappearance? Could her fiance even have something to do with this? And yeah, this was really like, there was like loads of questions like being brought up. Like it definitely kept you kind of asking loads of questions throughout the book. It was quite pacey. There was like a really creepy atmosphere to it, and it's quite like enclosed and cut off, because they're in like this kind of, not a compound, but kind of like a compound in the middle of the woods. There's like no mobile service, there's no internet, so like you really feel like the characters are cut off. It's kind of like horror story-esque in a way, and that kind of all builds up as the story progresses, and the tension just builds and builds. There were a few things that I felt like were a little bit, came down to more editing than anything else, that I felt just needed to be improved. There was a couple there were a couple of things that were repeated a lot, and then also there were just some plot hole kind of things that I didn't like, I kind of noticed, and I don't think made sense in terms of the story. But this was a really quick read for me. I did really enjoy it, and yeah, I was having a very busy lifetime as well during when I was reading this, and having books that I can just like get sucked into and read really quickly and really enjoy is really really fun for me. So I was glad about that. And yeah, Jade's next book is actually out really soon, and I'm looking forward to reading that one when it comes out as well. Then a surprise for me is one that I've had on my TBR for a really long time, and I kind of wanted to tick off some of these like really old TBR books that I had on like my want to read on Goodreads. So that was The Last Runaway by Tracy Chevalier. I do enjoy Tracy Chevalier's writing. I've read her before, and this is just one that I've had on my list for ages that I wanted to read. And we're following a character who emigrates from England to America with her sister, because her sister is getting married to this man. It's kind of like, it's not an arranged marriage, because they knew him from their hometown before, then he goes to America, and then basically the sister is following him. And we follow her as she goes along with her sister, but then something happens to her sister. Her sister gets sick on the journey, as many people do, like on the ship. I think it's on the ship over that her sister gets sick, and her sister dies. She ends up having to go to this family who she doesn't really know that well, She's supposed to be there with her sister, helping her sister as her sister like adjusts to married life, and she's there completely on her own and feeling really isolated. So she's going into this kind of Quaker community, which I don't know that much about, which I found really interesting in this book as well, to kind of learn about how they live and their values and stuff like that. She ends up in this Quaker community and makes decisions about her future that she didn't think she'd have to make, because she obviously thought that she'd be living with her sister, and she ends up getting involved in kind of like the Underground Railroad, which I thought was really interesting, and I really liked the main character and kind of her convictions and what she felt was right, what she was being told kind of not to do and to turn a blind eye and not to help out, and she was like, well, this isn't kind of, say, the Christianity that we're learning about in church and we're preaching, and like not caring for these people who desperately need our help, and when we do oppose slavery and we oppose what's happening to them, but then they're not going to like help them. And yeah, I thought it was just a really well written book, and with really kind of intriguing characters that had so much depth to them as well. There was this kind of relationship that the main character had with this, it wasn't a romantic relationship, but it was kind of this just like intense connection type of relationship with one of these guys who was more or less a slaver, or like someone who would he was like the person who would catch the runaway slaves, so he wasn't a very nice person, but then he had this very intense relationship with this kind of Quaker girl that it's like he couldn't really stay away from her, and she kind of felt herself drawn to him as well, but not necessarily in a romantic or like passionate way. It was just this kind of connection between the two of them, and I actually really loved reading their connection on the page, and when they would be talking to each other and in the same vicinity as each other, it was just like really obvious, this connection between the two of them, and I thought that was written really, really well. So yeah, this was a nice surprise for me, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I really enjoyed it. And then I went to a reread. This is something I've wanted to reread for ages, Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. This is set in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. We are following a character called Cushla, who is a primary school teacher by day, and then she helps out in her family bar at night time. And the bar is kind of weird in terms of it's run by Catholics but terms to have Protestant customers. So it's a bit of a weird one in that way. And we see Cushla kind of going through a lot. Like she's like in her early to mid 20s. She's living in basically a war zone. She's trying to help this young boy in her class whose family is just going through it and is quite like down and out, and the family are just constantly being attacked for their beliefs, and yeah, it's just not a nice place to grow up. Like it's constantly like there's always like news reports and radio things in this book about like shootings and bombings and different things, army movements, stuff like that. So we can never forget that they like are literally living in a war zone. Her mother is an alcoholic and not very nice to live with, and she's not really getting much support from her brother. So she's dealing with a lot, and then she ends up having an affair with a married man who is also a Protestant. This is just really intriguing, really well written. I loved it just as much as I did the second time. I just really, really enjoyed it. As I said, my reading for my physical books are a little bit slower, so sometimes I felt like I wasn't as into it as I was the first time I read it, but that's just more because of life circumstance for me at the time. I still did really, really enjoy it. Still haven't watched the TV show, which I really need to do. So maybe after what we're currently watching, which is The Beast in Me with Claire Danes, we might watch this one. I might convince my husband to give this one a go, because I do still really need to read it. After that, I read a non-fiction book, another Irish non-fiction book, and that was Limitless by Nuala Moore. This one is interesting and kind of disappointing all at the same time. So this is about Nuala Moore, who is kind of like, she's like a cold water swimmer. And I'd never heard of her before, like this book. And I'd kind of seen this book floating around for a couple of years. And she does this kind of cold water swimming challenges. So she's done like this like ice swimming in like Russia. She's done all sorts of like this like cold water, like Irish, like she swam around Ireland, like in the Irish Sea, and like obviously the Atlantic then, done this whole thing around Ireland with like the other people, and like it's obviously with a crew, and it's all like organized and stuff, and like well managed, so it's like as safe as it can be. But she has done that, and she's just basically talking about her love of swimming, her love of the ocean, and then just the different challenges that she's done. And yeah, really, really interesting hobby to be into. She kind of went from, she also talks about how she did like kind of marathons and not even marathons, like things where you do like the cycling, the swimming and the running, triathlons. Talking about that, talking about the struggles she's had, the times she's kind of failed, the times she's done really well. And yeah, I did really enjoy this. I just kind of felt like it got a little bit repetitive in terms of the challenges. It would kind of be not the same thing over and over again, but kind of the same thing over and over again. And I just kind of would love to, I kind of wanted to know more about how she fit everything in around her normal life. Cause, so like we kind of get she's caring for her father, and then she's also has like a shop that she runs. And then now and again she has like a partner in the book as well. But I kind of was like, these are like really big challenges that like you need to really put a lot of yourself into. So how are you able to like live a normal day-to-day life, whether it's with a family or with a partner, or like running your own business and like also managing all of that. And I kind of felt like I would love to see how they kind of slotted in more together rather than just focusing on the swimming. I kind of wanted to know how it all fit in together. But I did enjoy this, and one of the things I actually loved as well is she kind of briefly kind of talks about her body and stuff in it, and from pictures of her as well. Like, I mean, at this point I think she's like in her 50s now, maybe. She might not be that old, she might be in her 40s, but like she's not like, she's obviously like this really, really, really fit person, but she's also not like this skinny mini person either. Like she has a bit of meat on her, she has muscle, she looks like someone who's like really fit and really able, and like you have to be that kind of person to be like literally like swimming in the sea, which is what she is doing all the time, and dealing with like these like really extreme conditions, and like literally putting yourself into hypothermia to get somewhere, like almost like dying so many times from the cold. And yeah, I just kind of love that she wasn't just this like itty bitty thing, that she was like this not proper, but like she was like this well-built woman. And it kind of goes to show that, like, you know what I mean, you don't have to be this perfect size to do these amazing things, and have these amazing feats of strength and resilience and like fitness. And I just really appreciated that. So yeah, I give this a 3 out of 5 stars. As I said, it wasn't my favourite overall, but I still did enjoy it. The next book I read then, the last book I read in January, was The Accomplice by Steve Cavanagh. It is the something book in the Eddie Flynn series, and Eddie Flynn is a defence lawyer, and he takes on these different cases all the time, and we're kind of following him and his team as they are trying to get these people off different charges. And some of them I've loved, some of them I haven't loved so much. This one is probably one that I liked but I didn't love. This one is Eddie takes on the case of a woman called Carrie, who is the wife of this serial killer, and everyone thinks that she was an accomplice, that she had to have known what her husband was doing. There's no way that she wouldn't have picked up on the different women that he was killing. And so she is obviously not like doing very well in the light of all of these, and she is kind of does a disappearing act, and Eddie has to try and find her and also try and figure out a way that like to show people that she is that she's innocent. And also I think at the time, I think as well, they never caught the Sandman, so they have the Sandman, who was the serial killer. They know who he is, but they never caught him. But they have Carrie, who they think is his accomplice. And then when her trial is about to go on, the Sandman starts killing again in a way of like telling them to let Carrie go. So again, there's this killer on the loose, and there are people at risk of being killed, including some people who are close to the team. And they're quite killed in quite a gruesome manner. So it's not that nice. So yeah, this was good. I enjoyed it. There was a couple of new characters that came in that I thought were really interesting. There's obviously a tension because there's a bit of like a time countdown in a way, of them having to find Carrie, find the Sandman, convince everyone that Carrie is innocent, and also like the victim that the Sandman has, they're trying to save her as well. So there's all of that. But I did enjoy it. I found it a little bit predictable, but in a good way. I don't mind knowing what's going to happen in these. I just like to see how it's all played out, and how the characters will figure it out. So yeah, I did enjoy this. 4 out of 5 stars. It just wasn't as good as the previous Eddie Flynn that I had read. And then if we go on to the books that I read in February, I'm going to try and get through these quickly because I feel like I've been talking for longer than I thought I would. The first book I have down is a non-fiction book, and it was How to Wean Your Baby by Charlotte Stirling, because my baby hit 6 months in January. So between January and February was kind of introducing her to solids and stuff, and I was really nervous about it. So I ended up picking up this guide for that, and there's like a 30-day guide and kind of information and stuff, and it was fine. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was good for my nervousness, the 30-day guide. If you do have a baby and you're worried about them, how to kind of introduce them to solids, the 30-day guide is really good in this. The rest of it, give or take, is fine. It's just a normal recipe book for the rest of it. So yeah, I have this down, so I'm just going to talk about it quickly. But not that interesting if you don't have a baby who is starting solids. The next one is a non-fiction book I read, which is Rough Magic by Lara Pryor Palmer, and this one is interesting. Again, a little bit disappointing for me because I thought I was going to love this one. It's about a Mongolian horse race that takes place every year, where you have to basically go across like this big stretch of Mongolia on horseback on these wild horses. You get a different horse every single day, and you're just like galloping across the land to like from like checkpoint to checkpoint, until eventually one person wins the race. There's a lot of like drop-offs. It's very, very physically challenging. You obviously have to be a very good horse rider because you're on different horses every day, and with different temperaments, and some of them might not want you on their back. They might not like you that day. They might not want to be racing across Mongolia that day. So we are following a character who kind of on a complete whim, kind of in between. She doesn't really know what to do between like her exams in college. She just decides to sign up for it and somehow is accepted onto it. So she hasn't really done a lot of training. She is a horse rider because her auntie is an Olympic equestrian rider, so she does have like a horse experience in her background, but isn't someone who, say, grew up with a horse or owned a lot of horses in her life. But I loved the premise of this book and the premise of the race itself, and I kind of enjoyed following along with Lara and all the different horses that she got, because I was in it for the horses, right? I wanted to know all about the horses, these particularly bred horses, these Mongolian horses, that are like really hardy and like these amazing little creatures, and I wanted to know all about them. I wanted to know about each horse every single day. I would have loved a chapter like dedicated to each horse and like named after each horse and how she got along with them and how that like particular stretch went. That's how I would have liked this book to have been like laid out, I think, more about the horses than anything else. But I didn't really love Lara. I didn't love her as a writer. I found her slightly eccentric in a way that was like privileged, and she would kind of go off on tangents about things that I was like, what are you even talking about? Like, I don't even know. Like, get back to the race. I don't care about what you're talking about. And just, yeah, her style of writing just didn't gel with me at all. So I did kind of find her a little bit annoying. I also found it annoying how like ill prepared for the race she was. Like she didn't even pack a spare change of clothes or like pajamas for herself, and I was like, how do you do this like race that's supposed to go on for like several weeks and not even pack a change of clothes? Like, how is that even possible? Like, you were a literal idiot. And then I did learn after though that the race isn't actually like I learned during this book that the race that she's in isn't this like traditional race. I thought it was like this traditional race that like foreigners were starting to take part in, but it's actually not. It's actually a race that was only made up or organised a few years ago by an Englishman, and I think that like it's mostly participated in by foreigners. So yeah, it's not this like Mongolian tradition that like she wasn't insulting this Mongolian tradition, because it was just a race like organised by another English guy. But again, I mean, come on, like you can be a little bit like, come on, like pack yourself a pair of pajamas, pack yourself another pair of clothes, at least 2 pairs of clothes. Like that would be a good idea. I do think, yeah, her entire journey, like, it kind of was like, oh, she's like the youngest person to ever win this race. That's the whole thing of this book. It's like, she's the youngest person and the first woman to ever win this race. The race has been only going on for a few years before she even started it. And then she ended up winning on a complete fluke. And if you ask me, I don't think she actually really won. So that's my opinion. You'd have to kind of know more about, like, how she won, and I actually feel like very sorry for the person who should have won, and I do think that, like, she was fuming, and I do actually rightfully think she had the right to be angry, because yeah, she probably should have won. So yeah, so my thing about this is less of the author talking shite and more about the little horses that she was riding and what they were like, and their names, that the names she gave them every day, and their little personalities. And that's what I wanted to know more about, rather than her stupidity and ill-preparedness and eccentricity. Yeah. So I gave this like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was fine. But yeah, it was kind of one I pushed myself through rather than really enjoyed. After that, I read an audiobook, which is Across the River, which is the second Mossgrove book by Alice Taylor. This is just this really kind of gentle series, a trilogy that's set in like the 50s in Ireland, and it's kind of showing this kind of rural living at the time. We're following this particular family who live in this on this farm, or this piece of land called Mossgrove. And this one really surprised me. I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. In the first book, the dad of the family dies, and the mother of the family, she's not a very nice woman. She's a bit of a wagon, and she hates her sister-in-law. She kind of just like is one of these people who thinks everyone is out to get her when they're not, and she decides she wants to sell Mossgrove, and that would like really like heartbreak for everyone involved, and she was going to sell it to like the neighbor who was kind of like the family's greatest enemy. So like even to sell it to him would have been like an absolute kick in the teeth to everyone else in the family. So that doesn't happen in the first book, and then in the second book we're kind of following more about that neighboring family and the dad of that family, and how he still has this like big grudge against the family, and he wants to do basically like terrible things to them. He wants to like ruin their life. He's just someone who is like filled with like hatred and yeah, horrible intent, is not very nice to his children, abuses his wife, abuses his children as well. We saw that in the first book as well. And we see kind of how this plays out, and the wife of that was not nice in the first book has some great character growth in this one, and I did end up quite liking her and really respecting her in this one, which I never thought would happen. And it is kind of funny that I call this like a gentle series when you're following someone who is actually does attempt to sexually assault a young girl in this book, and it was implied that he sexually assaulted his own daughter in the first book, and yeah, there's kind of like violence and stuff in this book, but it's still really gentle. I don't know how to describe it. It's just still this kind of gently flowing book where you kind of know that the bad people will get their comeuppance in one way or another. There will be people who like won't let them get away with what they're doing. So yeah, I did really enjoy this one. Still haven't read the third one. I meant to do it during the Irish Readathon and I didn't get around to it, but yeah, I did really enjoy this one. 4.5 stars. And then I read someone that a lot of people have been reading and loving, and that was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one is about astronauts in the 80s. We're following a character who joins the NASA space program as a female astronaut, and she's training, and she ends up in a relationship with another astronaut who's also a woman. So we're following like this queer relationship in the 80s. It kind of has to be kept secret, and were just like their separate journeys as well to become astronauts, and we're kind of two different timelines. There's one timeline where one of the girls is up in space and something terrible goes on, and then we're also following a few years previously and their like training programs, and how it all kind of like meets up in the middle. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I just love anything around kind of like space and stuff like that. I think it's really interesting, and I actually probably preferred, like, I think it was my cousin who told me she read it and she didn't love the space stuff so much but enjoyed like the more romance bits, and I think I was actually the opposite, where I enjoyed the space bits more than the romancy bits. Though I will say the end of this did have me on the edge, and I did have a very big ball of emotion. I didn't like sob the way I've seen some people cry at the end of this book, but it definitely like hit me in the feels. I think it was a very good ending. So really well written. Yeah, and I did really, really enjoy it. So I still think one of my favourite ones is Carrie Soto's Back for Taylor Jenkins Reid. I really love that book, and it's one I actually do really want to reread. So yeah. Then one of my NetGalley backlist books that I managed to pick up was The Border by Steve Schafer. This, we're following 3 teenagers who get involved in this. Their family end up getting like gunned down in Mexico by the cartel, and they end up on the run and doing that kind of big journey across the desert from Mexico into the United States, and we're following them on that journey and how terrible it is for them and how hard, and how, I'm sorry, there's 4 of them. There's 3 boys and a girl. And how life-threatening it is for them. And yeah, I enjoyed this. I can't really say too much about it. Like, it was just like this YA. I think like if I was a younger reader, it probably would have hit me more. But there were still some quite like serious bits in it. Like, you know, like their families were literally gunned down, and then we do still see kind of the cartel continuing to come after them because they know who they are, and they don't want them to get away. So we're kind of seeing them having to flee from that, and like that's very scary for a couple of like 15-year-olds. There was this kind of like little romance in the middle of it that I was like, guys, you are literally like fleeing for your life. Maybe pause that and pick it up when you're like somewhere safe. So there was that. So yeah, this was fine. It was like as I said, a 3 out of 5 stars. We'll say it's not own voices. The author does kind of talk a little bit about why he chose to write this book, which I can't remember why. I think it was like he had a friend who went to Mexico and had like a bad experience or something. I actually can't remember what it was now, but I still don't think it was like, is it his place to write this book in like something that he doesn't know that much about? But I mean, but I still think it was done respectfully. I don't think there was anything wrong with the story, but it's not necessarily like his story to write either. But I don't know, people have different opinions on that as well. So I don't think he did anything wrong, or like, in my opinion, but I don't know either, insulting or anything with the book. And he does talk about his decisions onto why he had his own decisions on why he wanted to write the book. So yeah. Then I read a Kristin Hannah book, and I haven't read a Kristin Hannah book in a very long time. I think the only other one I've read is The Nightingale, which I do really love. And this is The Four Winds, and this is about something that I've never really learned about before, which is the American Dust Bowl era. And I feel like I've heard about that, but I never really learned about what exactly it was. And we are following a woman who basically she marries into this family, and they have this little farm in Kansas, and then it's like this really like drought period happens, and the farms are all like basically crumbling into dust. There's nothing being grown. They're starving. Her husband ends up walking out and like leaving her and her family, leaving his parents, leaving his children, leaving her, because he just can't deal with it. And then she's left. Everyone always thought that she was weak when she was younger, and she's kind of left to be the one holding everyone up. And then eventually her and her children end up having to leave behind the grandparents to go to California to find work and to kind of try and find a better life. But they end up in basically what is like this massive refugee camp. They're working for like nothing every day. They're treated really badly. They're living in dire conditions. And yeah, it was really eye-opening. It was kind of like you could see that like there's so many things that happen in history that are kind of repeated all the time, and it's like we never learn from our own actions. We can never learn, like, we see how people were treated in the past, and why can't we learn empathy from that and not do it again in the future? And there were so many kind of parallels for this for me, in like that reminded me of so many things, from like whether it's the refugee camps in Palestine to just how like immigrants are treated everywhere, and people who are just like hardworking people who are just desperately looking for work, who end up in circumstances completely out of their control. And yeah, I thought it was really well written. It was probably slightly long-winded, and I didn't love the ending. just not my favourite thing to happen at the end, but I don't think anyone would like that either. Yeah, an emotional roller coaster. I felt like this one. I thought the characters were amazing, really strong, particularly the mother character was just amazing. Just goes to show like the strength of a mother as well, and the strength of someone who is just willing to do anything she can for her children. And yeah, just a very interesting point of history that I didn't know about American history. There's certain elements of American history that I obviously don't know anything about because I am not American, don't learn too much about it in school. So yeah, I definitely would read more books set in this period, so if you have any recommendations I would love to know. And then I read the 11th book in the Maeve Kerrigan series, which was the second last book to what is currently published, and that is A Stranger in the Family by Jane Casey. This one, Maeve, who is our main character, who is like a detective something, inspector, constable, I can never remember the ranks. She's a detective. Her and her partner Josh Derwent, who is like her partner but also kind of like her boss, he's like one up in the ranks to her. They investigate this the death of this old couple, and at first it looks like it's like a murder suicide, and then they find out that this couple's daughter went missing like 14 or 15 years previously, maybe even more so, maybe like 20 years previously. And there's a lot of questions there about like what happened to her, like is she still alive, and they kind of reopen that investigation as well, and they're kind of looking at both of them simultaneously because they feel like the two of them have to be linked, because it turns out that it's not a murder suicide, it was like a murder and someone else was involved in that. So yeah, we are looking at that, and in this one we see a big step kind of in Maeve and Josh's relationship, which is kind of a very much will they, won't they, what will they do kind of relationship. A lot of sexual tension, which I really like, and I really like the two of them, and I just really want them to get it on. We see that kind of ramp up in this one, which is very, very fun. And again, yeah, the investigation was really good, the relationships really good, lots of really good. This is one that she doesn't really do it a lot, she ends on a cliffhanger, and yeah, it was excellent and I loved it, and 4.5 out of 5 stars. I got interrupted when I had one last book to talk about, so I'm going to very quickly wrap this video up now. The last book I read was The Marquess Makes His Move by Diana Quincy. This is the third book in her Clandestine Affairs trilogy. I do have a little monster behind me if you hear any chattering. And this one was interesting. We are following, I think he is, yeah, Marquess. And he basically goes undercover in this household to as like a footman, and he is of Persian descent, I believe, and we followed his sister in the first book and his cousin in the second book, and he is basically trying to figure out, he thinks that his neighbour has cheated him in terms of this map being made, and his neighbour is trying to take part of his land, so he thinks that the map maker has cheated him basically, so he's gone undercover to try and figure this out, and he gets to know he's kind of like the personal footman to this map maker's wife, and he gets to know her. He ends up realising, we kind of get her POV and his POV, and we also end up realising that she is actually the map maker and her husband is basically taking credit for all of her work, and of also kind of doing illegal things with that map making as well, for money from other people, in terms of getting land and stuff. And yeah, so the Marquess and the map maker's wife, their names I cannot remember right now, they get closer and closer, and obviously there is a secret there because he's actually a Marquess, he's not just this foot servant, and he is actually a lot like higher in standing than her. She is just like this like kind of map maker's wife. She's not a person of the ton in that way, and she is kind of like a working, not like she's like a working member of society, like she has a trade, so that would kind of be looked down upon as well, so it would kind of be like, and then also she's married, so it's kind of like, how is this going to work out? So we kind of follow them along with that, follow their romance and follow like different things they find out about each other, about their own relationships, and how it kind of ends up for them to be together eventually, like will, because there is this also, there's like this massive secret of who he actually is, and there's also the barrier of the fact that she is already married as well, so how is all of that going to work out? I really enjoyed this one. I thought that it was just like a really, their relationship was really nice. The secret, the kind of the way it all went about was very good. And yeah, it was just really enjoyable. I think, did I read this? When did the Bridgerton come out? The last season of Bridgerton, did it come out in January? So maybe I was or in February. I think I was reading this around the same time as Bridgerton maybe was out. So it was just kind of nice to read like a Regency era while also watching a Regency show. And yeah, I enjoyed it. So this one was like a really solid 4 to 5 stars. It was a very good trilogy overall. I also really enjoyed that Diana Quincy writes people of colour within the town, within the Regency society, and how that kind of can affect them in terms of how they're treated by others. And also it's just really nice to see a little bit of colour, where like, 'cause the books tend to be very, very white. Bridgerton is nice because it's so diverse, where the books tend not to be so much. So it was nice to see that in this, and they are particularly of Palestinian descent as well, the family that we're following. So I really enjoyed that. So yeah, this is a solid 4 or 5 stars, and I will definitely be watching or following reading more of Diana Quincy's work, because I do really like her romances, I like her books, and I like her characters, so I'll be reading more of her. So that's everything I read in January and February. This was a bit of a topsy-turvy wrap-up. I'm getting interrupted and having a little creature crawling about right now. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will follow up soon with my March reading wrap-up, hopefully not too far of a gap between the two, and then I'll also have my April and May wrap-up then as well, hopefully the start of June. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.